This video will focus on the steps I took to paint the flesh, the clothing, and the rifle. The leathers and the red lenses of the rifle I may release as shorts as I continue playing with that format of video. After the assembly is complete, I use an airbrush to first prime everything in black before giving a zenithal spray of green. This I follow with another zenithal spray of a lighter green made by adding some tan paint into the green already in the airbrush. For the flesh, I spray a ruddy brown from above, trying to minimize any overspray onto the clothing as best I can, though I don't stress too much about any overspray that I do end up with. I then finish up with the airbrush by spraying pure tan lightly from directly overhead. I inevitably get quite a bit of overspray, but I don't let that bother me. These airbrush colors will serve as a quote-unquote base coat for all of my colors. The tan and the tan mixed in with the green provides a washed out but light tone that is easily tinted by Army Painter's Speedpaints. Again, I'm only showing what I did to paint the flesh and green areas, but at the end of this video I'll provide a chart showing all of the colors I used for each section. Once the speed paint has fully dried, I begin highlighting each area with the exception of the flesh. I only do 2 highlights of slightly brighter tones. The flesh I spent a little extra time on, and I started this with a highlight of a fleshy tone that was almost thin to a glaze, but not quite as thin as a glaze. This I followed up with the second highlight of an off-white, and only applied this to the very upraised parts of the exposed flesh, such as the knuckles, the nose, cheeks, and ears, for example. I wanted to add a little warmth to the flesh, so I glazed some magenta, just a little here and there where the parts would be warmer, such as under the cheeks and the back of the exposed hand. I then glazed a dark blue where the body hair would be. The intention of this was to make the areas the hair would be painted to look a little darker or thicker, with some smaller hairs present, much like a 5 o'clock shadow from shaving. However, I got this a little too dark on the back of his hand and it looks more like a faded tattoo than short hair growth. I then take some black paint that is slightly thin so I can get fine lines, and I do my best to paint on some longer hairs in short strips. This was slow but fast at the same time, since there was only the tops of the feet and the back of the hands for me to do this to. Moving on to the green, I hit the upraised areas with a slightly lighter tone that is well thinned, though not as thin as a glaze. Ultimately, the highlighting of all the green areas was the single longest step in this project, as I put green pretty much on most of this miniature. I then add one additional highlight, following the same approach, though covering much less surface area and focusing mainly on the most upraised parts of each of the green sections. The speed paints and the 2 airbrushed base coats that came before these highlights took care of adding some darker tones for shadows, so it looks a little better than it probably deserves to be, considering how quick all of these steps went. And this is where I stopped. When it was all said and done, I spent barely over 7 hours on this project, with most of the time going into the green elements, which took about 2 hours. The general assembly and mold line cleanup took an additional hour, and the application of speed paints took another hour. Everything else went notably quicker. I really like how the flesh came out on this one, as well as the leathers and the scope's lenses. I'm also happy with the green tones, and I feel despite the weapon and clothing being the same green paints, I did a good enough job with how I highlighted them for one to feel more metallic than the other, specifically with the cylindrical parts of the scope and muzzle brake. For lessons learned, I missed a pretty major mold line on his hat and on the side of his head, though you have to be looking at it from just the right angle for it to be noticeable, and I can't really notice it outside of a photograph or without a magnifying glass, so I guess that's more of a win than a loss, considering I only have one really egregious mold line haunting me for this one. I probably could have done better on the eyes if I put more time into it, but they were very thin and difficult to paint cleanly. In the end, I really like this miniature, especially from a Warhammer perspective, mainly because he's not in a battle stance or fighting pose. I kinda want to get another one of these and put him on a tank as a passenger. It seems like it's very rare to get a miniature from GW that just looks like he's got a moment to rest, to sit down and relax his feet. This way he can breathe in the stench of demon warped corpses that are burning in the Prometheum all around him. Yeah, I still gotta keep it grimdark. I mean, it's 40k, it's not the Shire. Hobbit feet or no. And that'll bring this video to its end. I hope you learned something or inspired to start your own collection of free miniatures provided by your local Warhammer store. If you're lucky enough to have one anyway. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and if you like the content of this video and would like to see more, you can easily support the channel by liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. I'm Jim with Working with Miniatures. I'm truly grateful for your time, and I bid you a fond farewell. Until the next video.